This wonderful idea. Talk to me about the ideas that Boris has put forward, because that's the thing. He's saying that if you've got a right to buy, I mean, what is it? Just break it down for me.
So basically what Boris is explaining to everybody is that we all have the right to own our own home. Now, I agree with that, of course we do, but it's how we do that that's really important. Now, the reason why most people rent is because they can't afford to buy. So rather than breaking down into social housing and trying to fix the problem short term, what we really should be looking at is the mortgage issues. The criteria for people to get mortgages is horrendous at the moment, and I genuinely don't know how that's going to work with people on benefits as well as people that are working.
OK, but let's go back to it. So what is he saying? So the right to buy, what's he saying about that?
He's saying that anybody that's in social housing has got the right to buy the property that they're living in.
But don't they have that right anyway?
They do if they are local authority. Now, that was brought in by Margaret Thatcher. Right. So that's something that she brought in a long time ago, and that actually got rid of an awful lot of housing stock for the local authorities. Now, that's never happened for the housing associations before. They've never been in a position where they've had to sell their stock off before, like they're being asked now. What they have been able to do, and this is exclusive to housing associations, is shared ownership. So a tenant living in a housing association property at the moment does have the opportunity for shared ownership with some of the schemes. So if you can buy a property and rent at the same time, you're paying towards your mortgage as well as paying towards your rent.
Interesting. OK, so basically the scheme the scheme would help people if it's a council, if it's a
Housing association.
Housing association.
Yeah.
And those who it's not a house association may have a right to a share of ownership.
That's right, yeah.
So basically, either one of those, the shared ownership, people could buy the house anyway. So that doesn't... And the other one, could they buy the house anyway, in any case?
Yeah, so local authority, which is council, have always had the...
So you can do that anyway. So what he said doesn't really have any value at all, because those people could still buy houses.
They could if there's the shared ownership scheme with the housing associations, which most of them have. But what I think Boris is saying, he's actually giving the housing association tenants that don't have the shared ownership scheme at the moment the option to buy the properties they're living in.
So, but that's quite a small portion of people, because surely the real problem is private landlords. You know, so if you're in a private rented home and you've been paying your rent just religiously for 3 years, and then you want to try and get a mortgage, that payment, the fact that you've made that religious payment, is not taken into account. So those people in shared ownerships and those and those other homes will still have those homes, and they can pass them on, can they, to other people as well?
In certain circumstances, yes, depending on the type of tenancy they've got, some people will be able to pass their properties on, which is called succession, and that means that property from a housing association could be out of circulation for quite, you know, some considerable years, because one family is progressing it through. So it's not actually available for anybody else to move into.
Oh, I see. So still the people in private rented accommodation are not being helped, and they're the bulk of the people. Let me just bring in Richard Blanco. He's from the Landlords Association, the National Residential Landlords Association. OK, so what do you make of his scheme? Because, you know, the landlords, the idea, whilst it does help people who are already being helped in terms of housing, it doesn't really do much for the private renters, and surely that's the bulk of people.
Yes, I mean, I think the government's got a little bit of a dogmatic obsession with home ownership, and I'd like to see it facilitating all of the tenures. So we need to build more homes, yes, for private ownership, but we also need to build more council homes for council renting and for housing associations to rent, and we need to make the environment less hostile, really, for landlords, so that landlords are still able to buy and rent properties, which people are desperate for. I mean, at the moment, there's a real shortage in supply of privately rented properties, and that's partly because landlords are starting to sell up because of unfavourable taxation.